Hello, good day, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it might be. Session is starting soon. Session is starting. Let's get rid of the timer there. Um, there we go. Good. Welcome, everyone. I'll start in about 20 seconds. This is the time where, if this was a real life auditorium, people are finding their seats and sort of just getting their coffee ready or their popcorn or whatever it might be. But let us make a start because I want to get us going. Welcome, everyone. Um, just to make sure you're in the right place, today I'll be giving you some information about a new course we're offering here at Real Python, Python for Beginners. So if you're a beginner, you've never done programming before, or maybe you've done a bit of programming, you've done the basics, but you still consider yourself a beginner, then this is the right place for you. If you're a very proficient Python programmer, you're more than welcome to stay, but I'll be talking about a course aimed for those earlier in their learning journey, as it were. Good. Okay. Let's make a start. Hopefully you've all found your seats. There are two different audiences here. There are some of you who are on Zoom and you know how Zoom works. This is an information session, but it's also a Q&A session. So please do ask questions. If you're on Zoom, you have two options of asking questions. There's a chat, or if you want, you can raise your hand and come on stage if you like and ask the question directly, whatever you prefer. Then we also have many of you watching the streaming. We're also streaming this on several social media platforms. And on most platforms, you should be able to ask the question on the platform you're at, and I'll be able to see it. So if you see me glance to my left, it's because I have the chats there with the chat from Zoom and the chat from social media. So I'm keeping an eye on any questions that come in. Brilliant as always. We have some spammers on YouTube, maybe. Never mind, we'll ignore them. Good, good, good. Okay, let's make a start. So you're beginners, hopefully, or nearly beginners. I've told you to ask questions whenever you want. Let me briefly tell you a bit who I am, not because you didn't come here to find out about me, of course, but this is a live course. I'll be teaching this course, so it's useful for you to know a bit. So I'm Stephen, first of all, if you can't see my name underneath me, Stephen Gruppetta. I'm a scientist by training. I've spent many years working as a physicist before shifting from physics to Python. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been focusing on Python education. In fact, this is not starting soon, right? There you go. We've started now. This is the link, by the way. I'll refer to it often. All of the information I'll be talking about today, you'll also find a summary of it there at realpython.com/live. And I'll show you this page later on as we go through the syllabus of the course. So I've moved from physics to Python. I've been working with teaching Python for a while. About a year ago, I joined Real Python as part of the core team. I had worked with Real Python before, but now I'm part of the core team. And I came in to set up the live content for Real Python. So the course I'm going to talk to you about today, I designed the course so I can answer questions on what's in it and why it's designed the way it is. I'll also be teaching it so I can answer questions on how it will actually run. And anyway, you know who I am. You know who's going to be teaching this course. If you're familiar with Real Python, some of you may be new to Real Python, in which case, welcome to Real Python. But if you're familiar with Real Python, you probably know the tutorials that you may have used, or if you're a beginner, you're starting to get to know. And maybe you know the video courses, which have been around at Real Python for a while. What we're doing here, and this is something we've introduced this year, is to add yet another way of learning. And this is the live cohort courses, which are new for Real Python. We've already run quite a few earlier this year, but they were courses for intermediate learners. So the format of the course, the type of course that I'm going to talk to you about, we've actually run it. It's tried and tested. We've also made some improvements based on the feedback that students gave us, but those weren't courses for beginners. Whereas now, starting soon, we have our course for beginners. And these courses are great because, well, depending on how you like to learn, of course, different people have different formats of learning, different ways of learning. But if you like to have something to keep you accountable, something that is thorough, you have work to do every day, but that you can fit around your daily lives. You've got busy lives, I'm sure, with work, studies, taking the dog for a walk, whatever it might be. What we've done is we've designed a course that is covers a lot of the fundamentals, covers them in detail, but that you can fit within your existing commitment. So you don't have to give up weeks of your life and focus exclusively on learning Python. You can fit it with everything else. That's the course we designed, and I'll be telling you more about the format of the course, what's going to happen on every day, so then you can get a sense of whether this works for you or not. Previous students in earlier courses we've run also find that the accountability helps. The fact that you have material every day, you have an instructor who is, I mean, I'm not forcing you to do the work, of course, but that puts a bit of accountability, and you feel like you want to keep up with the cohort, because you won't be studying alone, you'll be studying in a cohort, a small cohort, but still, it's a group of students learning together. So that's great for keeping the motivation as well. Okay, so there are two parts of today's session. I want to talk about the format of the course. That's important because you want to make sure it's what works for you, it's what you can fit within your day. And then we'll talk about the content of the course. Now, I've already told you it's a beginner's course. So in some ways, the content is easy, right? We're going to start from the basics, but I'll still take you through some of the key topics, and I'll show you where you can read the curriculum in more detail. Good. I have a question that's come in. Do we have a Spanish translation? No, unfortunately, at the moment, I do speak a bit of Spanish, but not enough to run the session, and certainly not enough to run the course. So I'll have to stick with English, unfortunately. Please do keep questions coming. Drago, that's one of the first questions I'll be asking, so I'll be answering. So I'm not ignoring your question. The question is, what is the time commitment per week? I'll be talking about that very shortly. In fact, let me do that now. Let me start with the format. Let me shift the page. And I do not like PowerPoint slides. So in the course, you will not ever see a PowerPoint slide. So I don't have one either here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write a few notes as I go along. So it's a bit like a running commentary. Let me give you the highlights, if you like, of the format. And then I'll go through each one of them and extend a bit. So first of all, importantly, this is an 8-week course. How long is the course? Well, it's 8 weeks. I'll tell you in a bit why 8 weeks, why not shorter, why not longer. There's a reason behind everything we've done here. Now, to answer Draco's question, roughly, it's 1 to 2 hours commitment per day, per weekday. And I spelled commitment wrongly there. Thank you for telling me there. There we go. Double M, double T, maybe. Anyway, never mind. No, still doesn't like it. Commitment is there. There you go. Per weekday. So Monday to Friday. I'll tell you the weekend is calmer, but later I'll talk about a forum, which is 24/7 pretty much. But the daily content is Monday to Friday for 8 weeks. Roughly, it's going to be about 1 or 2 hours commitment per weekday. I'll say a bit more about this, and sort of I'll add a bit more detail on what is included in those 1 or 2 hours. Now, a lot of the daily content is going to be designed in a way that you can fit it within your day. However, this is also a live course, and we have 3 weekly live sessions. So we will meet live. The content is not delivered entirely live. Why? Because we want to make it flexible. We want it so that a lot of the content you can actually fit early in the morning before you go for your morning run, or in your lunchtime, or maybe when you come home from work, and whenever it fits you. But there are going to be 3 fixed points every week where we're going to meet live. And this is, I think, a really important aspect of this course. So I'll tell you more about this. So three times per week we will meet like this on Zoom. I say like this, it's not actually like this, right? Because here I am talking to a large number of people. In these courses, it's going to be a smaller group, and we will be all talking to each other. I'll tell you more about time zones. I have a question coming in on Zoom. We have 2 sessions we have 2 different sessions. Hopefully they'll meet your time zones. I'll show you where they are, and I'll show you the times in a bit. So keep your questions coming in. If I know I'm going to answer it later, if it's okay, I'll keep it in the flow. Good. 3 sessions a week. There's going to be 10 students per cohort. So these are small groups. I think it's important because we want to have, in these live sessions, it's about discussing, it's about getting to know each other, it's about you being able to be comfortable asking questions and sharing your views. The moment it becomes large sessions, you cannot do that. So 10 students. And doesn't seem like much, but I think this is one of the most important aspects of the course, the forum. Okay, so that's an overview. Let me go through each one of these now, and I'll add a bit more. I'll keep looking at questions there. I've got a question about recordings, so I'll answer that now. Yes, the live lesson, I'm assuming, okay, this question could be a recording of this information session. This is being recorded. So those of you on Zoom will receive an email. Those of you on social media, if you can't find it on the social media platform you're on, send us an email and we'll send you a link. You'll find this session on the Real Python YouTube page at the end. However, if the question was about the live sessions in the course, ideally, they're live. It's about having a discussion. Ideally, you should commit to this course if you think you can come to these sessions live, but they are recorded. So if someone has to drop out in one of these live sessions, or on one particular Wednesday, you have a busy day at work, then the sessions are recorded and the students in the course will have access to the recordings. Incidentally, I'll also post here. Let me post it now in the two chats. I had this earlier on the slide. All the information I'm giving you is on the page I've just given you. So all the details, someone asked me about the time zones. I'll talk about it later on. It's also there. Dates, times, cost, everything is on realpython.com/live. Okay, so 8 weeks. We wanted this course to be not a course that just scratches the surface a bit. You learn a few things, but you really can't do much about it. So, that's what a 1 week course does, right? Or a 2 week course, unless it's very intensive. And we didn't want it to be very intensive either, because this is a course designed for people who want to fit this with their existing commitments. So 8 weeks is a good period of time where we can cover quite a bit. We don't have to rush through topics. We can go a bit deeper in some of the topics, work on projects, as I'll show you later on. We'll be not just learning the theory, we'll be applying it right from week 1 in lots of mini projects and then a project at the end. So 8 weeks. As I've mentioned, the content will be a Monday to Friday, but it's an 8-week course. Nothing much more I can say about the 8 weeks. You know how long 8 weeks are. Now, I mentioned earlier, it's roughly 1 to 2 hours commitment per day, per weekday. This will vary, right? There might be some days where it might, you might feel like, oh, it's taking me a bit longer than 2 hours to cover this material. But that will always be balanced by some days where, it might be like, oh, I've got all of today's stuff in 1 hour. So it will vary slightly depending on the day. But roughly, if you're thinking, can I possibly fit this course in with my daily commitment? If you do not have 1 or 2 hours per day, this is not the right course for you, because you will need to put in, as you would expect, the time to go to the learning, and then the time in sort of meeting live, having discussions, working on exercises, working on the projects, etc. So roughly 1 or 2 hours commitment per weekday, plus or minus. What will a typical day look like? Now, there is no such thing as a typical day, but roughly, each day you'll have content on the course platform, and this will include a video from me introducing the day, just to link everything in. And then I've curated material from the Real Python resources. Some of it will be tutorial segments of tutorials to read through. Some of them will be video lessons. These are the recorded ones. And this is the content that you can fit in whatever time of the day. It's there on the platform. You can fit it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, whenever you want. If you've had a busy day and you haven't been able to finish everything from that day, you can catch up the following day as well. Likewise, if you feel like you're going to have a busy day tomorrow, you can go a bit ahead and start doing tomorrow's material. So that's the daily material that's on the platform. There'll be exercises to work through, etc., etc. Now, that's not just it, right? And this is where we come for our live weekly sessions. And let me write here. So there are two types of sessions a week. There's one 90-minute, let's call it a structured lesson. So this will be on a Wednesday. I'll show you the times in a bit, and you'll find the times in your time zone at realpython.com/live. And so the Wednesday session is a 90-minute session, and this is where we're covering material. So some of the material won't be covered in the recordings and the videos you have. We'll cover it live. This is normally the type of material that I find it's better to discuss face-to-face and to have a live discussion. But that's one session. Then we have two Q&A sessions per week. So that's where the 3 live sessions come. And these will be Monday and Friday for these beginners courses. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we'll be meeting live. The Monday and the Friday are, well, Q&As, as it says on the tin. I don't come in with a plan of what I want to cover. This is where you can bring questions. I will answer them. But I often like to call this not a Q&A, but a Q&A and D. The D is for discussion, because, and this is true for the structured lesson as well, I think a lot of benefit comes out from these live sessions from the discussions we have. So yes, you will ask questions, but my answers will often be in the form of a discussion. You will give me your views, and those discussions are usually very meaningful because it's where we can explore and meander a bit around Python, and that's what really gives us the deep learning. So I find these live lessons really useful from an instructor's point of view. And I know that many learners, we've run these courses for intermediates, as I've mentioned earlier, found this live aspect really important, because you'll be going through material every day. You will have questions. There's no doubt, no matter how great our tutorials are and our video courses are, and I'm sure they are, you still have questions, because that's how learning works, right? You're thinking, have I understood this correctly? And there are 2 ways you can deal with that. One of them is to say, I've got a Q&A later today. I'm going to ask Stephen this question. Let me write it down. I'll tell you the second way in a bit. But that's what these Q&As are. You'll have lots of questions. You have a way of ironing them out in a live session with other students and with myself, of course. Now, to make these live sessions work and effective, we can't have 50, 60, 70 students in a course. So each cohort, each group is limited to 10 students. Now, we are running 2 simultaneous cohorts, 2 cohorts at the same time. The live lessons will be at different parts of the day. So depending on which one suits you, you'll either be in my morning one or my afternoon one. Yours will be different times. And this is important because in the live sessions, I think we want to be smaller groups. But overall, there'll be 20 students learning together, 10 in one cohort and 10 in the other. Oh, by the way, someone asked me, how long will the Q&A and D sessions be? In fact, thank you. I'll put the D there as well. Q&A and D, question and answer and discussion. They're scheduled for 60 minutes. Sometimes we go longer because if there are questions, we'll just keep answering them, right? So often, if there are still questions, they go a tiny bit longer. It depends how many questions you have. But they're scheduled for 60 minutes, and the Wednesday session is a 90-minute session. Good. I'll have a quick look there. I'll come back to some questions, right? I can see a few questions there. Brilliant. I think I've answered many of them, but I'll keep an eye on the questions. Last but not least, as they say, it's usually a cliche, right? But it is true, because I think the forum is one of the most important aspects of this course. Of course, everything else is important, but the forum is there just for this course. So 20 students, 10 per cohort. In the forum, we can all communicate together, because in the forum, it's actually better to have slightly more people, more discussions. So in the live lessons, it's going to be 10 and 10. In the forum, it's going to be everyone together. You're all learning the same thing. And the forum is there just for the course. So 21 of us, plus some of my colleagues maybe who will be there. And the idea is, I did mention when you're going through the material, you're going to have questions. One option is to write it down and then come and ask it in the Q&A session. Or you can simply go straight away on the forum and post it there. The forum is a 24/7 platform. Now, I should put a little star there next to it, right? I do have to sleep from time to time. I am human, I promise. I'm not an AI. So I do have to sleep. In the weekends, I might have, the kids to take somewhere. So when I say 24/7, you can ask the questions 24/7. There's probably going to be someone from the cohort there 24/7. I'll be there a lot of the time, not quite 24/7 because sleep is important. But you can ask the question at any point and you'll get a response fairly quickly, especially if it's my working day. And the idea of the forum is very similar to the Q&As. It's yet another place to keep the conversation going. You'll have questions. I'll post answers, but often in a discussion form. I'll share more of my thoughts on the forum. It's a very informal way of sharing my perspectives. Exercises, you'll be working on exercises, you finished it, let me post it on the forum and see what Stephen or anyone else thinks. So the forum is a lively place where we can keep the discussions going for the whole 8 weeks of the course. Good. I've got another question there. Is the live session included in 1 to 2 hours per day? Great question. Yes. So when I say 1 to 2 hours per day, this 90 minutes is normally included in the day. The Q&A isn't fully included. So on Q&A days, the Q&A is sort of, we're stretching the 2 hours, if you like. But this 90 minutes, as you'll see later on most Wednesdays, when we have a 90-minute session, on most, not all Wednesdays, you won't have any material to go through in your own time. So the 90-minute session will be either the only sort of learning or there will be a tiny bit more. However, the Q&As are usually they stretch a bit over the 2 hours. We're trying to find a compromise here to fit in a lot of material, a lot of live content, a lot of live interaction between me and you as students, but also to keep it fairly manageable. Let me have a look at a few more questions. So this is more or less the format. I think I've covered everything in the format. Let me have a look whether I've missed anything. I'll come to the content in a bit. Let me have a look at a few more questions. Someone mentioned project there. I do have something to say about projects. So hello to everyone, by the way. Sorry, I'm not responding to everyone saying hello. Hello to all of you. Someone asked me here. By the way, if I've missed your question at some point, do ask it again. Someone asked me here, I have been reading much theoretical literature, and now I focus on the practical and would like to know how to remember, how to use elements like functions. Okay, this is a common question. Theory and practice. You need to learn the theory, like with every technical subject. You can't ignore the theory. Some people try to do that. Some people say, oh, I'm just going to go and work straight away on projects. And that's great, but you need to learn the theory as you go along. So the theory is important, but another mistake is the other way around, is the other extreme, to learn lots of theory and then learn more theory and then more theory. And that is great, but the theory by itself doesn't give you a project. So what we're going to try to do in this, what we will do in this course is to merge the two. A lot of the material you'll be doing in sort of the on your own learning, this is material I've curated for you for every single day of the course. A lot of it will be obviously covering the theory, but we will have lots of projects going throughout. And that's where we're going to be. As soon as you've learned the theory, let's apply it to the project we're working on this week. And that's where we're trying to get you to take that theory and translate it into practice. This is a bit tricky sometimes. I often compare learning to program with learning a foreign language. Some of you may have experience with learning a foreign language, and sometimes you get to a point, maybe some of you will say, yeah, that's me when I was learning whatever language it might be. You get to a point where you've learned the language enough to be able to read it and more or less understand it when you read it. maybe even when you listen to someone speaking. But if it's you who needs to write from scratch, or if it's you who needs to speak, you find it really hard. Programming is the same. If you learn a lot of theory, that's great. You may be able to look at code and then, oh yeah, I understand what this code does. But if you have a blank screen and you want to try to write code, that's where you need to learn how to apply the theory to practice. And that's where the projects come in. Who was asking the question? Amnon, I'm not sure whether that was your question. Hopefully I've answered that question for you. Do we have any exercises after a 90-minute session on Wednesday? So you'll have exercises are there throughout the whole course. So there will be some standalone exercises, and then we have projects. I'll show you the curriculum of the course, and you'll see lots of mini projects, as well as I'll tell you about the main project at the end. And the way the projects work is as follows. I will not be telling you, here's how to do this project. Copy the code I'm doing. What we'll do is we'll do it the other way around. We'll discuss what the project is. I'll tell you, okay, today, why not try to work on this aspect of the project? You work on it, and then we'll discuss it on the forum and the Q&As. Yes, I will also have my own videos showing you, okay, now that you've tried working on the project, here's how I would do it. But the idea is you try it first, and that's where you're... So to answer the question about exercises, the projects and exercises are spread throughout. And on the forum, I often post extra exercises depending on the day's topic. I'm like, oh, here's a good exercise to try out. And the idea here is that if you have time to try out the exercises, that's great. I tend to provide slightly more exercises than you might need, right? So depending on how much time you have. Let me go through a few more questions before I move to the content side of things. Let's have a look. Do you have a recommended study or learning method to fix what the daily read? I mean, everyone has their own way of studying and learning, right? So the way the content is it's structured, right? So I'm giving you what's first, second, third, fourth. So the best way is to go through the material. Some of it will be reading through it. Some of it will be video lessons. And I'll tell you my way of learning. My way of learning is to go through it, write some notes as I go along, write questions. It's like, oh, I didn't quite understand this. Write those questions. And then this is where asking those questions is possible in this course, because you can ask them on the forum or you can bring them along in the Q&A sessions. Again, I'm happy to discuss individual study styles if people learn differently. I think my advice would be to keep up with the material every day, to attend the live sessions. They're an essential part, I think, of making everything bind together, and to participate in the forum. This is very much a multimodal course. You have some stuff you will read, some stuff you'll watch video courses, some stuff we'll be doing live, some stuff is exercises and projects you're working on. And then there's the forum, the continuous conversation. So there are different styles of learning all coming together into this 8-week course. Good. I'll come back to, okay, I'll come to some other questions in a bit. Let me jump on my screen to this page. So I've talked about the format of the course. Let me now talk about the content of the course. I mentioned earlier, by the way, this link, I'm not going to read through it, right? In fact, I'm going to start straight away there. It's the link I've sent you earlier. I'll post it again, realpython.com/live. You'll find all of this information there. Incidentally, you'll also find the times in your own time zone. I'm based in the UK, so you can see that the two different times are shown in my time zone, but when you go to the site, you'll see the times in your own time zone. So then you know it's either one or the other, right? So you will join one of these groups depending on which one suits you. As you can see, they're split 10 hours apart, which is not great for me, but that's okay. I'll deal with it. Hopefully it's good for you because you can pick the one that fits your time best. Are not 10 hours apart. I can't even add up now. Anyway, they're different parts of the day, right? There you go. I need more coffee. So this is a beginner's course. As I've mentioned before, no prior knowledge is needed. So if you've never done any programming before, if you've never touched Python before, this is the right course for you. But also, and this is quite common, right? There are many people who've started learning the basics, maybe from a textbook, maybe from tutorials. So you may not be an absolute beginner who've never done anything, but you feel like you just know bits and bobs, and now you want to bring it all together, learn the fundamentals properly, and then use it as a springboard for what's next. So this is also the right course for you. If you've done some of the basics, of course, some things you will have seen before. But one thing I really believe in when teaching is to try to understand topics at a slightly deeper level. So not just how do I write an if statement, how do I write a while loop, but why do we do it this way? How is Python? Why does Python require us to do these things this way? Understanding the why we do things helps us with the applying the theory. Learning the theory is great, but if we want to apply it, knowing why things are the way they are, so digging a bit more underneath the surface, I find is really important. So even if you think, oh yeah, I've covered if statements, I've covered while loops, you might find that as we're discussing it, you'll understand them at a deeper level. Okay, so it's a course for beginners, so of course we're going to starting with the basics. If you're a beginner and you've never done any programming before, none of these terms will make sense to you. So don't worry. These are some of the basic building blocks that whatever you want to do with programming, it doesn't matter what it is. You may want to go on to the game development, data science. You may want to work in science, whatever it is. Anything you want to do with programming, you will need these fundamentals. You can't escape it. So you'll also see that there are mini projects. I've mentioned these, so we won't wait till the very end for a project. We will have a main project, as I'll show you later on, but we'll have these mini projects. So here, as you can expect, this week's mini project will be using the material we've been covering that week, and we'll be building it throughout the week, sort of not just in one go. And there you go. You can see every week has the 3 sessions. They're always Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The times will change depending on your time zone. We then move on. I'm not going to go through all of this, right? You can go through it. I'll give you an overview. I'll go a bit quicker. Next is iteration. Iteration is where we want to repeat. We have lots of items. We want to do something with each and every one of those items. A common tool is the for loops, which some of you may have heard of. And lists is a really important structure in Python where we store information, because programming is about storing information, storing data, and then doing stuff with those data. So we have different ways in Python of how we store information, and lists is one of them. There's another one there, a funny named one called tuples or tuples. Another mini project there, as you can see. And then the 3 sessions per week, the Q&A, and the live class on Wednesday. Now, week 3, this is one of the superpowers of programming. Defining functions, let me translate this. This is where you are creating your own words. If Python is a language, you can actually invent your own words and give them a meaning. And this is really, really useful in programming, because you can create mini programs that do one thing specifically, package them in what's called a function, and that makes programming so powerful and so flexible. So in week 3, we'll be talking about how you can create your own Python words, create define functions. We talked about data structures. We talked about lists, right, in week 2. This is where you store data. There are many other places in Python where you can store data, depending on what type of information you have and how you want to use it. So in week 4, we're going to focus on these data structures, talk about things like dictionaries, which are different from lists. So these are different containers, if you like, suitable for different types of data. We then move on in week 5 to a topic which is often considered upper beginners, lower intermediate, whichever way you want to look at it. And this is a subject called object-oriented programming. Now, the reason I've introduced object-oriented programming in a beginner's course is for 2 reasons. So the reasons are, first of all, it's a really important, it's called a paradigm, right? A style of coding. It's a really important style of coding in modern programming. You'll see it a lot. And depending on what you want to do later on with Python, it may very well be a type of programming you'll need to really master well eventually. So it's important to introduce it early on. That's one reason. It's an important standalone topic in itself. Second reason, Python as a language is built on top of object-oriented programming principles. So in order to understand Python at a deeper level, we need to understand the basics of this type of programming. So that's the second reason. Understanding the basics of what we call OOP for short helps us understand how things are connected. I mentioned digging underneath the surface of Python. Once you do, the plumbing underneath the surface, if you like, is all object-oriented programming. So understanding it, even not in all the detail, this is a topic you might learn more about in a future course, but understanding the basics helps us understand Python better. And that's what we're here for, right? To understand the basics of Python really well. Week 6, we'll talk more about object-oriented Python and how it links with everything we've done in weeks 1 to 5. And then no matter how much experience you get in programming, you will always have bugs in your code. A bug is when you've written code and it doesn't do what you expect it to do. Either it gives you an error or it gives you an answer which is wrong. And it's so common in programming that the skill to find the bugs and fix them has a name, and it's a part of programming itself, and that's debugging. So debugging is a bit art, a bit science. We'll start looking at some of the debugging techniques here so that we know how to find problems with our code. They're not always obvious to find, and how to fix them once we find them. That's weeks 1 to 6. That's where all the content, the theory is. The final 2 weeks, week 7 and week 8, we're going to be working on, so we've had lots of mini projects in weeks 1 to 6. Weeks 7 and 8 are one larger project, and we're going to be focusing just on this project in the last 2 weeks. As you can expect, this project uses pretty much all the topics we've been working on in the previous weeks. So this is where we're going to bring everything together in a project. As I've mentioned before, the way the project works is not me coding and you copying, but we discuss what needs to be done today on the first day of the project. You try it out, you see how it goes, you share your code in the forum, we discuss it, and then yes, I'll have my version eventually at the end of the day or the following day so that you can sort of see my input from it, but after you've done your work. Good. I've been talking a lot there. In the live sessions, I'll still be talking, of course, but I've mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again because it's important. The live sessions in the course are not like this session. In this session, I'm talking to lots of you. It's a one-way communication, although you're asking me questions and I'm answering them. But in the live sessions, it's going to be a smaller group. We can all see each other. You see me, I see you. I always like to think of the live sessions as if we're sitting in a comfortable coffee shop, quiet one because we need to chat, sitting around the same table, chatting and discussing. So the sessions will be very different to this one. Let me have a look at a few more questions now. And if there's anything, so that's the end of what I wanted to talk about, right? So now I have a look at questions, I'll summarize what we've done, and I'll keep going as long as there are questions to answer. So if there's anything you want me to go through again, let me know. Let me have a look at, there's a YouTube question. Do we have a course completion certificate? Yes. Those of you who are familiar with the video courses on Real Python, if you're absolute beginners, maybe you haven't seen them before, there is a completion certificate at the end. Same with this course. When you complete this course, you have a Real Python, it's an internal one, right? So it's a Real Python certification showing you've completed this 8-week course. Week 1 of the course, we learn variables. I'm reading a question there, right? I'm reading it out because not all of you can see all of the questions. In week 1 of the course, we learn variables, while loops, etc. And other weeks, we don't go back to it. Do we keep revisiting these items throughout the course? So that's a great question. So you are right. The main topics, let me go back to week 1, for example. The question, okay. If we're learning these topics in week one, will we never come across them again in weeks 2, 3, 4, 5? No, because what we're doing is we're building on top of these. So the mini project in week one is a bit limited because we can only use these topics. So there's so much you can do, right? But when we get to the mini project in week two, this project will not only use these topics, it will use these topics plus whatever we've learned in week one. You get the idea. As we move on to week three, now I'm not saying the mini project in week three will use every single topic we've done so far, but mini project in week three is not limited to using these topics. It's going to also be using the while loops and the for loops, etc., etc. And as we keep building more and more, every mini project is going to then review and come back to things. And then, of course, and I know you've asked this question before I talked about the project, the final 2-week project, we're going to pretty much cover within this project almost everything we've covered. So in these final 2 weeks, then everything will come back, and you might think, oh yes, the if statements were in week one. Let me go back and review what we've done in week one if you need to. So that's what this project is at the end. So we will keep coming back to the topics we've covered because our projects will get more complete. And this is what real programming is, right? When you're programming, you're not thinking, I'm going to use for loops and functions. You're going to use whatever tools you need and bring them all together. That's why we have lots of projects. Drago, hopefully that's answered your question. Okay, sorry, someone said you had a worry, which I've articulated well and made it clear. I don't know which one it is, but good. I'm glad I've helped you if that's the case. Someone asked me, do we have activities on the weekends too? So no, but sometimes I might have some exercises or some additional exercises where I'd be like, look, if you want to spend a bit of time in the weekend working on this, why not try this exercise? It's sort of something on the side. But really, you need some time. It's only within inverted commas about 1 or 2 hours of commitment a day, but it's an intensive course. There's a lot of material. There's a lot of learning happening. So it's not a bad idea to leave the weekend out, go and do other things, run in the park, whatever you do in the weekends, and have a break from your learning as well. On the other hand, if you've maybe fallen a bit behind because you were busy, then you can also use the weekend to catch up as well. So the weekend is off. Andres says OOP is where Python shines. I agree. OOP is a great aspect of Python, which is why we're introducing it in a beginner's course, even though normally it's more of an intermediate topic. Now, I have a question, and I thought someone would ask this, and I'll read it. Would you say that it's still relevant to learn coding today with the rise of AI, chatbots that can write code for you? Now, this is a topic that's been debated a lot recently. If you follow the Real Python podcast, by the way, we've just recorded an episode that talks a lot about this. I think it's coming out not today, next Friday, because the Real Python podcast comes out every Friday. It's always a nice listen, but I think next Friday we're going to talk about this. But let me give you a piece of my mind about AI. I use AI daily. And my view is very similar to other programmers who use AI daily. The more programming you know, the more efficient AI makes you. The less programming you know, the more risky using AI is. Now, I have seen, and I'm sure you have seen, some people on social media saying, oh, look what I've built with no knowledge of coding. I got AI to do it for me. Almost always there are some fun projects. Very few of them are projects that are used in real world scenarios. And there's a reason why. Because when you write code, an important part of it is, can I trust this code to reliably give me the output I need? And so far, no one has wanted to rely too much on AI generated code unless there's a human programmer who's been looking at it and making sure it's right. But I've been teaching Python for about 10 years. So of course, most of it was pre-generative AI. And before AI, I would always say, look, you need to learn the basics and the fundamentals of programming. You have to start there. But then you need to keep learning, and it will take a bit for you to be able to write a complete project that is useful in your work life. You might be able to write projects. We have lots of projects here, right? Um, they're going to be growing in what we're trying to achieve. But in terms of having something that is more on a professional level, it might take a bit longer. That's what I would have said before. Now, that's still the case, but the gap between knowing the fundamentals and being able to write professional level code, that has shrunk, because that's where AI can speed you up. So my answer is still, and you might say, "Oh, of course I would. Like, my job is to teach Python," but that's why I'm still here doing it and haven't gone to do anything else, because I think, if anything, learning the fundamentals of Python now opens a lot more doors because of generative AI than it ever did in the past. So that's my view. I'm yet to see real world code that has been written entirely by AI with no human input at all. There are some fun projects, some fun games you might see on social media, and that's great. But in terms of real world code, then you need to have that trust in the code, and that's trust that so far still needs to come from human programmers with some experience. Will we ever get there? Who knows? But I think when AI gets to the point where programmers are not needed, I think society as a whole has a bigger problem there, or bigger challenge, because that's the same time when AI will take over many other jobs, teachers, lawyers. So we may get there, but this AI is not there yet. I think the AI we have now is the AI that is making us more proficient as programmers and easier to move up the proficiency level. I certainly found that my case, whenever there's been a topic which I'm not very familiar with, whether it's programming or in other areas, the more I know about the topic, the quicker I can use AI to get me up to speed. So I'm happy to talk more about AI and where it all fits in. That's my view, and I think it's many people within the programming environment's view. I think we're seeing companies who are quick at laying off developers starting to hire them again now, because they've realized we have code here, but we need someone to fix the code that AI has written. Let me have a look. Back to the questions. How to master the basics first? Is there any method you can teach us? I could talk for 2 hours about this question, right? So I've mentioned it before and I mentioned it again. I think it's a mixture between learning the theory well and not skipping the theory. Some people say, I'm just going to go and write code, follow a tutorial, and that's good enough for me. I think understanding the theory and understanding a bit what's happening underneath the surface is really important, but because think of it as the foundations of a building, right? You need them there. You might not see them later on when you build the building, but they need to be there. But theory alone is not enough. It's learning the theory and then working on projects. Ideally, projects that you've come up with, things that you really want in your life. Maybe you want to automate something. Maybe there's something you're doing on a spreadsheet at the moment and you think, can I do this better? Or exercise projects like the ones we'll do in this course. So I think it's finding the balance between learning the theory well, but then applying it in projects and doing both. Some people tell you work only on projects. Some people tell you learn only the theory. I think you need to do both. That's my advice to master the basics. Amnon. Will there be handouts or notes? So every day of the course, you will have material. So when you join the course, you'll have day one. Here's all the material you have. Some of it is written tutorials. Some of it is video courses. Those are your resources. One thing I should mention is you will have access to these resources forever. It's not just for the 8 weeks of the course, right? All the material you'll have on day one, day two, day three, all the way up to the end of the course, all the written material, all the video courses, and all the recordings from our live sessions, you will have access to those for as long as you need them. So the course material is the handouts and notes, if you like. Um, Someone said, how long does it take to build real world code? That's how long is a piece of string question, right? Because it depends what the real world code is. Um, it's very difficult to answer it, right? Because there's some real world code that is not that difficult, relatively speaking. There's some real world code that's very complicated. So my advice is, again, this is the honest answer, right? It's likely to take longer than you expect it to think because programming is a technical subject. It's not something you can just say, okay, good, I'm going to start from zero, spend 6 weeks learning Python, and then I'm going to be a proficient Python programmer after 6 weeks. You will be proficient in the fundamentals and the basics, but it's like many technical subjects, it takes time, practice, experience, and then learning more topics. So it's very difficult to tell you how long it's going to take from zero to writing the project that you have in your mind. But as I've mentioned before, AI has made that a bit quicker now. Um, good. I think I've answered many questions there. Someone said I joined late. How many days per week and the time? So let me share the link again in both chats. So it's realpython.com/live. In fact, let me go back there. There we go. This session is recorded, by the way, this information session. So those of you on Zoom, you'll get an email from me with the link. Those of you elsewhere, if you can't find it on the platform you're on, some of you are on LinkedIn, some of you are on YouTube, whatever, it will be on the Real Python YouTube page. As soon as we finish, it should be there almost instantly. So you'll find this live session there. And all the information is at realpython.com/live. So to answer your question, Phaedra, it's every day. So it's 5 days a week for 8 weeks, but it's about 1 to 2 hours commitment per day. In fact, that's a perfect opportunity to take me back to my very brief summary that I built earlier. And I'll keep an eye on questions, right? So keep the questions coming if you have questions. I think I've answered. If I've missed any questions, let me know, by the way. But let me use this as a way of wrapping up, going again through the key points. And then if there are questions, I'll answer them. If not, I'll let you carry on with your day. So in summary, key points. This is for beginners, those who've not done any programming before, or those who have started learning some of the basics, but they feel they're still beginners and they feel like they know bits and bobs of the basics, but now they want to bring them together, learn the fundamentals thoroughly so that they're ready to move on. It's 8 weeks, but it's not an 8 week course where you have to give up everything, give up your studies, your job, and not eat. It's not a full day 8 week course. We've designed this so that you can fit this course within your existing commitments. So roughly it's going to be about 1 or 2 hours a day on those weekdays. They are intensive hours. There's a lot of material there. Sometimes it might be a bit longer than 2 hours. Yeah, let's be honest. Sometimes, because also it depends on, I can say 1 to 2 hours, but some people may want to reread bits of topics and rewatch some videos. Some people might want to take a bit longer to digest the topic. So my 1.5 hour, maybe your 2 hours, etc. But roughly, it's about 1 to 2 hours a day. It's not a 10 hours a day commitment like you have with some boot camps, which I've never understood. I think that's too much. However, there is a part of the week, 3 parts of the week, where it's not in your own time. This material you can cover in whatever time you want during the day, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever. But we also have 3 live sessions a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The Wednesday one is a more structured 90-minute session. The Monday and Friday ones are Q&As or Q&A and discussion sessions per week. Each cohort will be 10 students because we want to be able to chat to each other, discuss and have discussions. And then there's the forum, which is the glue that keeps everything together throughout the whole 8 weeks, 24/7, with the asterisk of I need to sleep sometimes. And this is where we can keep the conversation going. What time do we meet? So on the page I've shared with you, realpython.com/live. Let me go back to it. Oops, not this one, this one. You will find the times in your own time zone. Here it's showing my time zone. When you go to this page, it should show these times in your own time zone. One word of warning, just in case you've got a really busy schedule. The Actually, it's something I haven't mentioned, although I've hinted to it. The course starts on October the 13th. It goes on to December the 5th, I think. In this period, time zone, daylight saving nightmare comes in. Why? Because some countries change daylight saving at different times to others don't change at all. Depending where you are in the world, there's going to be a week. For example, in my case here, you can see that my times are 11 in the morning and 9 in the evening for me in the UK. But on week 3, this is when the US has already changed away from daylight saving. Europe hasn't. So there's 1 week where the times are a bit out of sync, and then they go back to the normal one. So depending on where you are in the world, just make sure there's that 1 week normally. And in some places, you don't have daylight saving at all. So the time will swap. So just bear in mind, the times here are anchored to the North American time zone. So they switch with the North American time zone. Just keep an eye on the times in case that is of relevance to you. Question. Sorry, Fedra, he said, if you are in the UK, it's yeah, sorry, I'm not going to convert time zones in my head, right? I don't know the time zones that well, but if you go to realpython.com/live, the time shown here should be your time zone. So that's the time that matters to you. This is on my computer. I'm based in the UK. That's why this is showing this time. So just check on here. You will find the time that matters to you in your time zone. I did have a question that I've skipped. I don't know anything about Python. I'm new to this. So week 1, we install Python on our computer. Yes, that's actually week 0. In the course, we do have a week 0, which is not shown here, right? But when you get access to the course, there's actually a section before week 1, which is week 0, which is here's how to install Python, here's how to install all the tools you need. I'll also be able to help, right? So those who join the course, I'll go back to, if you've never done Python before, if you've never done programming before, this is the course for you, right? This is designed for starting with the basics. And there is a week 0 which will help you install Python, so you'll get access to this. And before you start, before the October 13th, you can go through those resources to install Python, install the tools you need, make sure they work. I can always help if you're having issues, so that when October 13 comes, you're all set on your computer, ready to code in Python. So that was your first part of the question, Rego. Yes, the answer is we will show you how to install Python in week 0. After 8 weeks, to continue learning once it's done, so in minutes, what are the next steps? That is a great question. So if you're familiar with Real Python, you know that we also have lots of written tutorials covering all topics from beginners all the way to very advanced. And we have video courses. Same thing. Video courses cover the same topics. And the idea is that they're there for people who like to learn in different ways. So at the end of the course, I'll be able to tell you, good, depending on where you want to go, I'll be able to guide you individually if you want as well, depending on what you want. Here's what you can go for next, etc., etc. So that's a great way of doing it. Going to the more intermediate Real Python resources. We also have a course for intermediate learners. The next one will run in January. However, the intermediate course is normally there for those who have a bit of experience with the basics. So normally I wouldn't advise going from the beginner's course straight to the intermediate course. Ideally, you'd do the beginner's course, get experience, work on projects, get more comfortable with the fundamentals we're learning here, maybe extend them a bit, and then you'll be ready for the intermediate course. So we will have other courses like this at other levels as well. But my best advice would be, at the end of this course, carry on your learning and carry on working on projects. The two always go together. learning some extra theory, some topics you didn't know, but then applying them to projects straight away. And on real Python, there are many learning paths as well. So I think that's what the question, are there any guided paths? So yes, at real Python, we have some learning paths. So at the end of this course, we'll be able to guide you good. This is a good place to go on the learning path to carry on. On YouTube, someone asked me, do you have courses on Airflow 3? No, we are real Python. We focus on Python. So all our focus is on learning how to program with Python. That's a good example of programming, solving the problem of converting time zones. Yes, there is a module in Python called datetime, which is actually, and another one called time zone or zone. Yeah, anyway, zone info is called. So yeah, I can never remember. So there are tools in Python to help you deal with time zones. Absolutely. We won't be covering them in this beginner's course, but if someone has questions in the Q&A, why not? The Q&As are, we might dive into that as well. What sort of projects will we be working on? So it's a mixture of projects. Now, bear in mind that this is a beginner's course. So we are a bit limited on how complex the projects can be, especially early on, because complex projects need lots of moving parts working together. And therefore, the more complex a project is, for example, you mentioned their data analysis. One of the mini projects, the mini project in week 4, I'm going from memory here, but I've designed the course, so I'm fairly sure, is a gentle introduction to, it's not data analysis in the way you would expect, but it's starting to look into ideas behind data analysis, for example. Some of the earlier projects are a bit more basic, right? Because we haven't yet covered that much. So I think we need to be realistic. We can't have very complex projects in an introductory course, in a beginner's course, but they do build in complexity. And yeah, so we try to mix and match the type of projects, even though they're sort of relatively self-contained projects. Are there projects that can bridge beginner to intermediate? Yes, absolutely. I was mentioning earlier that at Real Python, we have resources across all levels, from beginner to intermediate to advanced, and there are many project-based resources on Real Python as well. So we will be able to give you ideas and share some of our resources where there are projects which would be ideal stepping stones from where you leave off from this course, of course. Is there a similar for JavaScript? No, not at the moment. So at the moment, Real Python is focused on Python. Maybe in the future is all I'll say. But for the time being, this is focused on Python. Drago asks me, this is a difficult question to answer, Drago. I'll read it out. How does Real Python's beginner course compare to other beginner courses online? What makes this course different, better? I'd like to say me, 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 me. No, I won't. I'm joking. Look, I can tell you, I'm not going to tell you about other courses, in part because, I haven't done them all myself, right? I'm going to tell you what I think is good about this course. Now, I'm biased, right? I've designed the course and I'm running the course. So, there you go. Small print. I am biased, of course, but I'll tell you what I think. I believe in, I've mentioned these things already, right? But I'm going to bring them all together. I have some important principles in terms of learning anything, really, not just programming. But first of all, it's the right mix between learning the theory, learning it well, and digging a bit underneath the surface, and mixing that with projects. Theory alone is fun, it's great, you feel like you know a lot, but you can't apply it. Projects alone will always leave gaps, and those gaps will come to bite you later on. If you just work on projects without getting the theory right, you'll get to a point where there are too many gaps in your knowledge and you struggle. So I find that the best way to learn in everything, and certainly in programming, is to learn the theory, learn it well, and apply it to projects. And keep repeating that. Theory, projects, theory, projects, theory, projects. So both moving together, which is why we have lots of mini projects that are sparsed around. So you have the theory. Let me go to an earlier. Yeah. This is the theory, right? We need to learn that theory because it's important. But then there's a mini project to apply it. The other thing that I think is really important is with programming, especially, again, this is true for all learning, but especially with programming, it's very easy to learn how to write a function. Oh yeah, okay, I know what to do, how to write a function. Um, I know how to write a for loop. And this can give the illusion of knowing how to program. But I think it's really important to understand why we write a for loop this way, why Python does this instead of that. So I always like to look at the why do we think, let me try again. Why do we do things the way we do them? Rather than just, here's how to write a for loop. Good, learn that. Here's how to write a while loop. Good, learn that. It's, I often say this and I'll say it again, it's digging underneath the surface a bit. It's one thing knowing what's happening above surface level, the syntax to write the code. But I think digging a bit underneath the surface allows you to see how everything is linked together. And this is, for example, why I've mentioned this when I was talking about object-oriented programming. This is why I want to introduce it in a beginner's course, because this shows us a bit of the plumbing that happens underneath the surface that keeps Python working as it is. So that's what I think is important for me. I think I'm a good communicator. Now, you've been hearing me talk to you. It's a one-way communication here. So hopefully I'm a bit better when I'm chatting and interacting with you. But hopefully I can convey the concepts. Some of them are abstract concepts. And one thing I've learned over the years is to know how much to introduce initially and then when to add more complexity. One of the dangers is to say, you want to learn about, let's pick one of them. You want to learn about the for loop. Let me tell you everything you need to know about the for loop. And I think it's also a skill, something you learn with experience to say, okay, let's get what we need about the for loops. And then later on, we'll add a bit more and add a bit more. So that's all I can tell you about. I can tell you how I teach and how I design the courses. Hopefully that convinces you. It's a good way. Um, I think I have answered all the questions. We've gone a bit over the hour. I don't mind. I can see quite a few of you are still here on Zoom and on the streaming platforms. I'll pause for a few more seconds in case you have questions for me. Let me go back to that's outline. I've gone through it. Let me go back there. Just to remind you, realpython.com/live is where all the information is, all the times, how to apply, the cost, all the information is there. If you have questions still, come and find me. Those of you on Zoom have my email. If you're not on Zoom, you'll find me on social media or just email RealPython and say, hey, Stephen was talking to us. Can you send this question to him and it will come to me? So wherever you want to find me, if you have questions, if some of you are thinking, I'm not actually a beginner, but I want to see whether this course is the right one for me, get in touch with me and I can discuss it individually with you. Good. If there are no more questions coming in on any of my chats, I will let you carry on with your morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever it might be. If you have any more questions, let me know. And hopefully I'll see some of you. I can't see many of you in the courses because we only have 10 and 10, right? So it's a limited number, but hopefully I'll see some of you on October the 13th for the start of this course. Oh, someone asked a question there. Yes, so in terms of registering and payment, etc., realpython.com/live. If you have questions on the admin side of things, if you email info@realpython.com, the admin side can deal with all of those things. So anything to do with the content of the course and the structure of the course, I'm the person for you, come to me. Anything which is sort of more technical, sort of admin related, feel free to go straight to info@realpython.com and they'll be able to help you brilliantly as well. Good. I'll stay here in the background for a few more seconds in case someone has a question. But if not, thank you for joining, and hopefully I'll see you soon.